We had a son, Tommy, who'd finished college and was working some office job downtown. He'd moved out a while back, renting his own place. Jake and I both worked at Steinman Financials. I was the deputy chief accountant, and he was in the finance department. Before we got hitched, we signed a prenup. It said if we ever split, whoever's name was on the property kept it, and we'd split the cash down the middle. Seemed fair at the time. We bought an apartment first, put it in my name. Then we got a house, put that in Jake's. We each had our own car. I always did the shopping for furniture and stuff. Jake hated it, even online shopping. So I kept all the receipts, being an accountant and all. Never knew when they might come in handy. Lately, Jake had been obsessing over our retirement. He'd spend hours poring over financial news, muttering about inflation and the rising cost of living. "Have you seen gas prices lately?" he'd grumble over breakfast. "And don't even get me started on groceries. How are we supposed to retire comfortably at this rate?" I'd try to reassure him, but he was like a dog with a bone. He'd research get-rich-quick schemes, always looking for that magic bullet. One day, he came home excited about day trading. "Amber, I think I found our ticket," he said, waving his tablet at me. "Look at these stock charts. If we play it right, we could double our money in no time." I shook my head. "Jake, that's too risky. We can't gamble with our savings." He sulked for days after that, but I stood firm. We needed stability, not high-risk ventures. One evening, Jake suggested we take a walk. The air was crisp, and the streets were quiet. As we strolled, he started talking about retirement again. "You know, Amber," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial, "there's a way we could make a few $100,000 easy. Set ourselves up for a cushy retirement." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? How's that?" He leaned in closer. "We could siphon some money from the company accounts. I can set up the transfers and finance, make them look legit. You just need to push them through in accounting." I stopped dead in my tracks. "Are you serious right now?" "That's theft, Jake. We could go to jail." He held up his hands, laughing suddenly. "Whoa, calm down. I was just joking. Testing your honesty, you know?" I relaxed a bit, but something felt off. "That's not funny, Jake. Don't joke about stuff like that." Sorry, he said, still chuckling. "Come on, let's head back." We walked home in silence, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. Something had changed, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Life went on as usual after that night, but something had shifted. I couldn't put my finger on it, but Jake seemed different. More distant, maybe. I tried to brush it off as stress from work. One day, our chief accountant quit unexpectedly. The company wasted no time in hiring a replacement. Her name was Vivian, and she waltzed into our office like she owned the place. Young, beautiful, and oozing confidence, she made quite an entrance. "Listen up, everyone," she announced on her first day. "Things are going to change around here. I expect nothing but the best from my team." Her eyes lingered on me a bit too long, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Something told me she wasn't happy about having me as her deputy. I was right. Over the next few weeks, Vivian made my life hell. She'd criticize my work constantly, making me redo reports multiple times for the tiniest errors. A few days later, during a management meeting, I noticed a glaring error in Vivian's calculations. I hesitated, not wanting to embarrass her, but my sense of duty won out. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaky. "I think there's a mistake in these numbers. The quarterly projections. They don't add up." The company director, Mr. Steinman, leaned forward. "Is this true, Vivian?" Vivian's face turned beet red. She snatched the report from me, scanned it quickly, then forced a smile. "It seems there was a small oversight. Thank you, Amber, for catching that." The words dripped with venom. As soon as the meeting ended, she cornered me in her office. Listen here, you old hag, she snarled, all pretense of professionalism gone. I don't care how long you've been here. I'm in charge now, and I'm going to make your life miserable until you quit. I stood my ground. I won't quit. I've done nothing wrong. She laughed, a cold, harsh sound. We'll see about that. You're on thin ice, Amber. One wrong move, and you're out. As I left her office, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I'd worked too hard to let some young upstart push me out. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Vivian seemed to be on a personal mission to make my life miserable. She'd pile work on my desk minutes before I was supposed to leave, criticize every little thing I did, and make snide comments in front of the whole team. I tried to keep my head down and do my job, but it was getting harder every day. Jake wasn't much help either. He'd come home late, barely talk during dinner, and spend most of his time glued to his phone. One particularly rough day, I decided to stay late to finish up some reports. The office was quiet, most people had gone home. As I was about to leave, I heard voices coming from Vivian's office. Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept closer to listen. Everything's going according to plan, I heard Vivian say. That old bag won't know what hit her. A man's voice responded, but it was too low for me to make out the words. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure they'd hear it. Just then, the door started to open. I bolted, nearly dropping my purse in my haste to get to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of a man leaving Vivian's office. I couldn't see his face, but something about his build seemed familiar. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Who was Vivian talking to? What were they planning? And why did that man seem familiar? The next morning, I was called into Mr. Steinman's office. My stomach dropped as I saw Vivian standing there, a triumphant smirk on her face. Amber, Mr. Steinman began, his voice grave. I'm afraid we have to let you go. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? Why? Vivian has brought some concerns to my attention, he said, not meeting my eyes. She feels you're not performing up to our standards. I tried to argue, to explain how Vivian had been treating me unfairly, how she could be harming the company. But Mr. Steinman wouldn't budge. Vivian comes highly recommended, he said. A good friend of mine vouched for her. I trust his judgment. As I stood there, shell-shocked, Mr. Steinman's expression softened slightly. Look, Amber. I appreciate your years of service. I'll make sure you get the maximum possible bonus. It's usually reserved for upper management, but I think you've earned it. I nodded numbly, barely hearing his words. As I turned to leave, Vivian's voice stopped me. Don't forget to clear out your desk, she said sweetly. We wouldn't want you to leave anything important behind. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the malice behind her perfect smile. In that moment, I knew this was personal. But why? What had I ever done to her? When I got home, the house was empty. I called Jake, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice breaking as I explained what had happened. As I sat on our couch, staring at the walls, I felt lost. My job had been such a big part of my identity. Who was I without it? The next few months were a whirlwind. At first, I tried to enjoy my unexpected vacation. I threw myself into home projects, finally tackling that renovation I'd been putting off for years. One evening, as I was putting the finishing touches on our newly renovated living room, Jake came home with a gleam in his eye. Amber, he said, excitement clear in his voice, I've got an idea. Let's buy a new house. I blinked at him, paintbrush still in hand. What? We just finished renovating this one. He waved dismissively. Yeah, but think about it. With all the work you've done, we could sell this place for a fortune. Add in a bit more cash, and we could get a real luxury home. There's one for sale just a few blocks over. It's got a pool and everything. I hesitated. I don't know, Jake. We've put so much work into this place. Come on, Amber, he pressed. I've already got a buyer lined up for this house. All we need to do